Scored a whole series of victories today. It's hard to encompass them all.
Sorry, girls. For every woman.
There are no girls here.
A new report from a federal watchdog confirms that FEMA employees did skip over homes with Trump campaign signs in the yard.
Oh, there it is.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for watching. Before I get into the 3 spicy clips I have for you today, I wanted to just let you all know that I do post very frequently over on X, and it is the most entertaining place next to YouTube on the internet. So you should definitely head over there and give me a follow. I post daily media clips, news stories, memes, and much more. So when you're done with this video, head over there and check me out. So first on the list, I have a spicy exchange between the editor of The Atlantic and Clay Travis from Outkick. She tried to police his language, and it went downhill from there.
We also understand that the trad wives, in the ones that we all know the names of, are making all the money because
Yes.
they're the Instagram stars and the men are their agents. So that's a really confusing situation.
This is something I'll say that the women are all going to agree with me on. It's going to shock you. Men are not living up to the expectations that you have for men, which is why a lot of women are single. They can't find men of the same achievement level as them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they don't want to worry that in addition to having to raise kids, they're going to have to drag a man around and be the breadwinner and the mom.
Right. So what do you? So that's the key. That's that. Right. Well, I mean, there's a class. We're not talking about class here. So but let's put that aside.
I think this is important too. 60% of college graduates now are women.
Right.
Right. So it is impossible. Sorry, girls. For every woman.
There are no girls here. Just
girls, boys,
yes.
You're girls and boys to
yes.
me too, as well as men and women. You know, I know it's policing language is a big part of what The Atlantic does, not what we do at Outkick.
The Atlantic is barely liberal, so.
Yes.
Yes.
Also has never made a profit without a multi-billionaire running it, which is worth knowing too. But unlike my company, which is wildly profitable because we speak to a big audience of people. But I do think if you look at 60% of women graduating from college, 40% are men. The math doesn't add up.
Yeah, no, The Atlantic is definitely left-wing, or what I would call state media when there's a Democrat-controlled government. The Atlantic is known for spreading many lies that always benefit the Democrats. I don't know of any lie or misinformation that they spread that in the end benefited the Republicans. And another thing here is, why is it not an issue that so many more women graduate from college than men? Of course, if it were the other way, you know that's all we'd ever hear about. So yeah, The Atlantic is definitely Democrat government slop that was probably propped up by USAID. All right, moving on. So last night I was watching CNN and I have the worst case of deja vu because CNN's Caitlin Collins had on John Bolton, and I just can't shake this feeling that I've heard this conspiracy theory before.
Well, I don't have any expectations anymore. I think we know exactly what's going to happen. President Trump has effectively surrendered to Putin before the negotiations have even begun. The positions that Defense Secretary Hegseth announced in Brussels, which I'm sure I'd be stunned if Trump didn't convey them directly to Putin in their phone call, constitute terms of a settlement that could have been written in the Kremlin. Maybe they were written in the Kremlin and got out in propaganda channels. But it's a complete reversal of the U.S. and NATO position on a number of issues. For example, up until today, the official American position was that Ukraine should be returned to full sovereignty and territorial integrity. That's gone. The question of NATO membership as far back as 2008 had been that ultimately Ukraine would become a NATO member. That doesn't look like that's around anymore either. Putin has scored a whole series of victories today. It's hard to encompass them all, but I think one, in addition to these substantive concessions, is that he has now, it seems, exactly what he wants. Putin doesn't want to negotiate with Zelensky. He wants to negotiate with Trump because he thinks he'll get more out of him, and he's absolutely right.
On your point that you just made about not having Ukraine be in NATO, borders returning to what they were pre-2014, which Hegseth said was off the table, if a Trump official was here tonight and they argued, well, that's just being realistic, what would you say to that?
I'd say that if you're going into a negotiation, you don't announce what's acceptable to you before it begins and give away positions. I tell you, I've done a lot of negotiation with the Russians, and there's no country out there that's better at pocketing concessions that you make and then wanting more. We used to joke in Soviet arms control days about a famous Russian negotiator who used to greet the Americans every morning with a jovial, "Well, what have you got for me today?" And that's what we're hearing from Russia. This is something Putin prepared the ground for. You know, last week he said he agreed with Trump that in the comments Trump had made in the election that the war never would have taken place had Trump been president. So he began the flattery campaign, the release of Mark Fogel, the American hostage, part of the flattery warm-up campaign, make Trump look like the center of attention. Belarus's decision to release an American and a couple others, part of the flattery campaign. It's obviously working.
Oh, well, allow me to retort.
Am I crazy, or is that just Russian collusion 2.0? There's no evidence for anything John Bolton just said there, especially the stuff about what the Kremlin is doing. By John Bolton's own standards, what John Bolton is doing right here is just spreading Kremlin propaganda. No, literally, the Kremlin just put out propaganda saying almost the exact words that came out of John Bolton's mouth. Bolton talks about the correct way to negotiate, says Trump's an idiot and has no idea what he's doing. But think about this. John Bolton and his cohorts have presided over what led up to this war in the first place. This isn't even a fringe opinion. It is well known that George Bush, John Bolton, Barack Obama, and all of their ilk completely failed, and it led to this war happening in the first place. John Bolton knows the right way to negotiate, yet his negotiations led to a war that they are failing to win.
This is completely different.
Let me just quickly say that I am no fan of Vladimir Putin, and I prefer that Ukraine be left alone. But we have to deal with reality here, that Russia has a lot more bodies to expend in meat waves.
Long-term future projection for Ukraine doesn't look promising. Eventually, fresh troops on the ground will matter. Ukraine is trying to inflict as many casualties on Russia as possible. Still, it's possible that if Ukraine doesn't get additional troops from outside Ukraine, in a year or two it may not be able to keep fighting Russia. All that means that the actual end of the war might come even sooner, as people give up even before the ship sinks completely.
Ukraine can keep fighting, which they are bravely doing, and we can even keep supplying them with weapons, but the hard fact is that Ukraine's population is just going to slowly dwindle away, while Russia hasn't even mobilized their main population yet. So far, all they've used is conscripts and people that live on the outer outskirts of Russia. Granted, if Putin did mobilize the interior of the country, it definitely would start to lower approval for the war, but you have to understand how brainwashed Russians are, and it might take many more years for that to actually happen. I don't like Vladimir Putin. I don't trust him. But if Donald Trump can get peace and stop this war, that's a good thing, because otherwise this just escalates until the point of World War III, and then we all die. Lastly, Ukraine not becoming a NATO member has absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump or Pete Hegseth. The NATO Secretary General himself said that Ukraine NATO membership was never guaranteed.
Well, listen, in Washington again, NATO committed to future NATO membership for Ukraine. But it has never been agreed that whenever peace talks would start, that peace talks would end anyway and always and definitely with NATO membership. That has never been agreed. It could be, but it never was that clearly stated.
What do you all think about Trump's Ukraine policy right now? Let me know in the comments. Okay, lastly, remember when the FEMA director, the media, and the Democrats were all saying that it was a conspiracy theory to claim that they weren't helping Trump supporters? Well, it turns out to be another conspiracy theory that's true.
Void homes advertising Trump. That's what a then FEMA supervisor allegedly told workers who were on the ground to assist hurricane victims in Florida last year. But now, a new report from a federal watchdog confirms that FEMA employees did skip over homes with Trump campaign signs in the yard. Senior correspondent Brian Enton joins us live from Miami with more on this. And Brian, there is now confirmation that this happened.
Yeah, we've been covering this for a while. We heard rumblings of this happening, but now the official Office of the Special Counsel report has come out, and it says 5 different members of a FEMA crew reported that they did not visit a home because there was a Trump 2024 campaign sign. The allegations of this happening first began circulating in October after Hurricane Milton ravaged Florida, and according to the new OSC report, a FEMA supervisor named Marnie Washington told the FEMA workers to avoid the houses with Trump signs while canvassing neighborhoods to assist hurricane survivors. This new report makes clear that none of the crew cited any safety concerns at the houses with the Trump signs. The OSC says the FEMA manager violated the Hatch Act, which prevents federal employees from political activity. The violations include engaging in political activity while on duty and using one's official authority or influence for the purpose of interfering with or affecting the result of an election. Those were the official violations. That FEMA manager has since been fired, Nicole. But remember, these are just the reports that were made public. There have been stories of people also in North Carolina after Hurricane Helene who felt that they were not getting the help they needed from FEMA because of their political beliefs.
All right.
Nicole?
Brian Enton, live for us there in Miami. Brian, thank you.
Now, this really pisses me off to no end.
That seems like pretty mild charges for discrimination, dereliction of duty, and putting people in danger. You know who we have to blame for this? The Democrats and their media, because they literally spent 4 years demonizing half this country as threats to democracy. And I said for years on my channel that would result in bad things because there's tons of people out there that actually believe that. And if you actually believe that, then you're going to take action against what you see as bad people. And what's even more insane is that you're going to see almost nothing about this in the media because they helped to incite it in the first place. They're to blame for it, and they are never held accountable. But if people see this and they see that once again something that the supposed free press told them was a conspiracy theory turns out to be true, then they're going to be much more skeptical when the media calls something a conspiracy theory or misinformation, which actually is a threat to the country. Because if there actually is misinformation or there actually is a conspiracy theory that's being passed around by our foreign adversaries in order to somehow benefit themselves, then nobody's going to believe it. But these people apparently never heard of the fable, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. All right, folks, what do you all think? Let me know in the comments. And if you're still here, might as well hit that like button and subscribe. I do post on a regular basis as well as daily and very frequently on X. So go check me out there and make sure to keep checking back here for more. Thanks a lot.